requesting you to play some bhajan today. Good morning, everyone. Let's open our books, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And we are on part 4, chapter 12, Taking Down the Walls. So if you have opened your books, let me start reading. At some point in your growth, it starts to become quieter inside. So this clearly tells us when there's a lot of noise inside, that means we haven't grown yet. So let me read it again. At some point in your growth, it starts to become quieter inside. This happens quite naturally as you take a deeper seat within yourself. You then come to realize that though you have always been in there, you have been completely overwhelmed by the constant barrage of thoughts, emotions, and sensory inputs that draw on your consciousness. As you see this, it begins to dawn on you that you might actually be able to go beyond all these disturbances. The more you sit in the seat of witness consciousness, the more you realize that since you are completely independent of what you are watching, there must be a way to break free of the magical hold that the psyche has on your awareness. There must be a way out. This inner breakthrough to complete freedom is traditionally depicted by the overused and generally misunderstood term enlightenment. The problem is that our views of enlightenment are either based upon our personal experiences or upon our limited conceptual understanding. Since most people have never had experiences in this realm, the state of enlightenment is either scoffed at completely or viewed as the ultimate mystical state accessible to almost no one. It's safe to say that the only thing most people know for sure about enlightenment is that they are not there. However, with the understanding that thoughts, emotions, and sensory objects are simply passing before your consciousness, it becomes reasonable to question whether your sense of awareness need to be limited to this experience. What if consciousness were to remove its focus from your personal set of thoughts, your personal set of emotions, and your limited sensory input? Would you become untethered from the bonds of the personal self and be set free to explore beyond? And how exactly did consciousness become bound to the personal self to begin with? The problem with even attempting to consider these questions is that they call for a discussion of what exists beyond the confines of the mind. Obviously, that discussion is very difficult to have from within the mental structure we are so accustomed to using. For this reason, we will begin exploring the untethered state through the use of an allegory, much like Plato used dialogue to tell his allegory of the cave. In 360 BC, we will use a short story to tell our allegory of a very special house. Imagine that you found yourself in the midst of an open field where the sun was always shining. It was a beautiful place of great light and great openness. It was so beautiful that you decided you wanted to live there. So you bought the land. And right in the middle of the enormous field, you began personally designing and building the house of your dreams. You put down a solid foundation because you wanted the house to be very strong and to last a long time. You built the house out of concrete blocks so that you wouldn't have any problems with decaying or leaking. To make the house ecologically sound, you decided to put in very few windows and to build a roof with lots of overhang. And after you put in the windows and the house was complete, you realized that a lot of heat came in. So you installed high quality protective shutters that not only reflected sunlight and heat back to the outside, but also could be locked down for security purposes. It was a very large house that could store enough supplies to allow the complete self-sufficiency. You even built separate quarters for a quiet acquaintance who would keep the house clean and leave you to be in solitude. And solitude it would be, since your romantic quest included a commitment to no phones, radios, televisions, or internet connections. Your house was finally finished, and you were very excited to be living out there. You loved the openness of the field and all the light and beauty of nature. But most of all, you were enamored with the house. You had put your heart and soul into every aspect of the design, and it showed. It was truly you. In fact, over time, between your infatuation with the house and your growing discomfort with all the strange sights and sounds outside, you started spending more time indoors. It was then that you realized that the shutters and doors fully locked down. The house actually began to feel like a fortress. And this was just fine with you. Being a city person, it was pretty scary living so far out of touch in total isolation, but you were committed to making it on your own. So you gradually became accustomed to living safely within the confines of the house. You happily went about your business of reading and writing as you had always longed to do. It was actually quite comfortable in there since it was fully climate controlled, and you had been wise enough to install a modern full spectrum lighting system. Ironically, you found your house so comfortable, enjoyable, and safe that you stopped thinking about the outside altogether. After all, the inside was familiar, predictable, and within the realm of your control. The outside was unknown, unpredictable, and completely out of your control. Your sense of inner sanctum was supported by the fact that when the shutters and blinds were locked in place, they blended like paintings on the walls. And you never even considered risking going outside to unlock them. They were so well made that when the lights were turned off, it was absolutely pitch black, day or night. But since you were accustomed to never turning off the lights, you did not notice it until they started burning out. It was only then that you realized your predicament. No one had left your replacement bulbs compatible with the new system. This meant that once the final light failed, you were left to find your way around the house in absolute darkness. From that point forward, the only light you had came from the few candles you kept for emergencies. But there were very few of these, so you conserved them well. Being a person who loved light, this was very difficult for you. Yet it was not difficult enough to force you to overcome the fears you had developed about leaving the safety of your house. Eventually, the stress of living in this darkness took its toll on your health, both physically and mentally. With the time, the very memory of the beautiful sunlit field began to fade from your mind, never to return again. You became very concerned about keeping the house lit. The only light you knew about was the light you created in the darkness with your precious candles. It became pretty lonely in there. You were cut off from everything, and the only comfort you felt was the sense of protection your house afforded you. You were no longer aware of exactly what you were so afraid of. You were just aware of always being scared and uncomfortable. It was all you could do just to try to hold yourself together. You even stopped reading and writing because of the lack of light. It was dark, and you too were falling into darkness. Then one day, the housekeeper, who shared your overwhelming need to stay in the safety of the house, called you down to the storage cellar. You were amazed by what you saw. A full supply of emergency flashlights had been found that could be powered simply by shaking them. Your housekeeper had already set some up, and the cellar was fully radiant. This was a true turning point in your life. You set about your business of trying to create light, beauty, and happiness within the confines of your house. You decorated each room and worked together to keep the light shining brightly until you went to sleep. You started reading and writing again, and it turned out that your housemate loved reading your writings. In fact, it was not just the artificial lights that were the lighting the house. The ember of love had begun to glow in both of your hearts. Imagine the light you could create together instead of apart. You began spending all of your time with each other, and you even staged a marriage ceremony. It was so beautiful as you vowed to take care of each other and bring love and light into your home compared to the darkness in which you had been living. This was heaven. One day you came across a book in your library. It interested you because it talked about the natural radiant light that exists outside. It even spoke of bathing in that light. But it was talking about more light than you could ever imagine, without anyone having to do anything to create it. This was confusing to you. After all, the only light you knew about was the artificial light from candles and flashlights. How could you make that much light and keep it going? You didn't have a clue what this book was talking about because you could only view things in relation to the way you were living. You were living inside the house, and therefore you were living inside of darkness. All the light that you could experience was limited to what you could create within the house. You had lived there for so long that all your hopes, dreams, philosophies, and beliefs were founded upon being inside the dark house. Your whole world was about keeping together the life you had managed to build for yourself within the confines of the house. When you continued reading this seemingly mystical book, it spoke of what it was like to actually walk around in this natural light. It seemed to be describing a self luminous, omnipresent light that shines everywhere all at once. It was a light that falls on everything constantly and evenly. Though you had no frame of reference for understanding this, it touched something deep inside of you. The book then discussed actually going outside, that is, going beyond the walls of the world you have created for yourself. In fact, it said that while you are attached and enamored with the world you created to avoid darkness, you will never know the abundance of natural light that is beyond the confines of your house. How will you ever go outside when you're so dependent upon what you have built inside? The analogy of life inside this house is a perfect fit for our predicament. Our consciousness, our awareness of being, is a living deep inside of us in an artificially sealed off area that is absolute. It has four walls, a floor, and a roof. It is so solid that not one ray of natural light comes in. The only light we get is what we manage to create for ourselves. If we don't create good situations for ourselves, there's darkness. So we are very busy decorating daily. We do this by trying to bring things in there with us, hoping to create at least a little light in the house of our own making, where we have sealed ourselves off. That is the visual. You are inside a house, totally sealed off from natural light, and the house is sitting in the middle of an open field full of brilliant light. But what is your house made of? What are your walls made of? How can they seal off all that light and keep you locked inside? Your house is made of your thoughts and emotions. The walls are made of your psyche. That's what that house is. It is all your past experiences, all your thoughts and emotions, all the concepts, views, opinions, beliefs, hopes, and dreams that you have collected around yourself. You hold them in place on all sides, including above and below you. You have pulled together in your mind a specific set of thoughts and emotions, and then you have woven them together into a conceptual world in which you live. This mental structure completely blocks you from whatever natural light is on the outside of its walls. You have walls of thoughts thick enough and closed enough to where nothing but darkness is inside that structure. You are so entrenched into paying attention to your thoughts and emotions that you never go beyond the borders they create. If you want to see how restrictive your walls are, just start walking toward them. Let's say you have an emotional fear of heights. When you were young, you fell off a ladder and the impression stayed with you. That is one of the walls. If you doubt that it's a wall, let's say you walk through it. Let's say something happens that activates these old feelings of fear and you decide to walk right toward it. The closer you get, the more you will have the urge to pull back. That which you collected from your past forms a boundary that you intuitively want to avoid. That's natural. That's what we do with walls. We avoid running into them. But because you avoid running into them, they lock you inside their parameter. They become your prison because they are the boundaries of your awareness. Because you are not willing to approach them, you can't see what is beyond them. When you approach the barrier areas of your thoughts and emotions, feels like going into an abyss. You don't want to go near that place, but you can go there. And if you want to get out, you will go there. Eventually, you will realize the darkness is not what's really there. What is really there are the walls that are blocking the infinite light. When you are looking for light, that is a crucial distinction. If you see a wall and it is protecting you from unending darkness, you will not want to go there. But if you see a wall that is blocking the light, you will want to go there in order to remove the wall. It is often said that you must go through the darkest night in order to get to the infinite light. This is because that we call darkness is really the blockage of light. You must go past these walls. It is not really difficult to get past the walls. Time and again, every day, the natural flow of life collides with our walls and tries to tear them down. But time and again, we defend them. You must realize that when you defend yourself, you are really defending your walls. There's nothing else to defend in there. There's just your awareness of being and the limited house you built to live in. What you're defending is the house you built to protect yourself. You are hiding inside. If something happens to challenge the walls of your psyche, you get highly defensive. You have built a self concept, moved inside, and now you defend that home with all you have. But what creates that inner home other than the walls of your thoughts? When you say, I am a woman and I am 45 years old, I am married to Joe, and I graduated from this school, those are thoughts. The actual situations don't exist in there with your except in the form of thoughts that you cling to. But I was a cheerleader and I was president of my senior class. That was 30 years ago. Those situations don't exist anymore, but they exist inside of you and they form the walls in which you live. What if somebody challenges your self concept and breaks a little hole in it? What if somebody manages to shake one of those foundational thoughts that the house of your psyche is built upon? Imagine if someone told you when you were 20 years old, wait a minute, those are not your parents. You were adopted. Didn't they ever tell you? You would adamantly deny it until they showed you the documents. It would shake up your whole inner being. Just one wrong thought, and the structure starts to crumble. Tremendous fear and turmoil can open up inside of you simply because something is not the way you thought it was. It shakes you to the core of your being. because it challenges the house of thoughts in which you are dwelling. To fix this, you start in with your relationship, ration, rationalizations. I knew they were really nice. They were just like my real parents would have been. Imagine them adopting someone like me and bringing me up just like their own. God, they were even more special than I thought they were. You patch that hole up very well. That's what we do with our walls. We keep them solid. Nothing is allowed to shake those walls. Notice that you patch the cracking wall with thoughts. You patch with thoughts that which is made of thoughts. That's what we do. Just like the people who fearfully lock themselves inside the dark house in the middle of a sunlit field and then struggle to create some light. We work hard to build a world within the confines of our inner walls that is better than the inner darkness. We decorate our walls with the memories of our past experiences and with our dreams of the future. In other words, we decorate them with thoughts, but just as the people in the house had the potential to step out of their own self made artificial world into the beauty of the natural light, you can step outside your house of thoughts into the unlimited. Your awareness can expand to encompass vast space instead of the limited space in which you dwell. Then, when you look back at that little house you built, you will wonder why you were ever in there. That is your journey out. True freedom is very close, it's just on the other side of your walls. Enlightenment is a very special thing, but in truth, one should not focus on it. Focus instead on the walls of your own making that are blocking the light. Of what purpose is it to build walls that block the light and then strive for enlightenment? You can get out simply by letting everybody life take down the walls you hold around yourself. You simply don't participate in supporting, maintaining, and defending your fortress. Imagine your house of thoughts standing in the middle of an ocean of light from a trillion stars. Imagine your awareness trapped inside the darkness of that house, struggling daily to live off the artificial light of your limited experiences. Now imagine the walls crumbling down and the effortless release of consciousness expanding into the brilliance of what is and always was. Now give that experience a name: enlightenment. Okay, this is the end of this chapter. So let's have some discussion on this. So what did you get out of it? Did you like it? Didn't like it? Did you understand